Hi, this is Ken Adams, and welcome to this edition of City Beat. And this week I'm joined by Jim Scheppke and Judy Martin, who are co-chairs of Renew Our Library, because there will be a bond issue on the November ballot. So what got you interested in working on this particular ballot initiative?
Well, Ken, we're both retired librarians.
Well, that's a good start.
Yeah, I was the state librarian for 20 years, and I retired about 6 years ago. And tell us about your background.
Well, I was the head librarian at South Salem High School for about 28 years, and when I retired, I kept being interested in helping libraries.
Me too.
Because it's kind of an important part of the community, really, I think. But
Is it ever?
Well, and so why do we need this bond issue?
Okay. Well, the city did a study of our downtown library in 2014 to try to determine its earthquake safety rating. And what they discovered, no surprise, in a 45-year-old building, is that our library is in terrible shape from that standpoint, and that it's actually likely to fall down when we get the big one earthquake. That's what they discovered through this engineering report. So that's the main reason, you know. It's part of what we have to do now in Salem. We've got a lot of buildings that are going to be very, very risky, and with the library, with so many people that use our library, it's particularly important that we do something to eliminate that risk.
Yeah, and it was only recently did they find out our Cascadia subduction zone, how strong it could be. That could be stronger than the San Andreas Fault in California, which is real famous.
And even the Mexican earthquake.
Yeah,
stronger than that. That was a 7-point earthquake, and we're supposed to have a 9-point earthquake.
But they come very seldom, which kind of lulls people to sleep.
True, but what we tell people in our campaign is we cite a study done at Oregon State University that says that in the next 50 years, we have a 1 in 3 chance of a Cascadia earthquake. And this was a professor named Dr. Chris Goldfinger. He actually made that statement 9 years ago, so it's
we only got 41 years.
That's right.
So yeah,
be prepared.
Yeah.
That's you know.
And we're talking about a 9.0 earthquake as a possibility.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of times on these zones, they have like tremors periodically to kind of relieve that pressure. So I get the impression with this one, it's not like there's going to be an easy way to determine if it's coming. It's just going to be a big one all of a sudden. So that's one of the reasons why Salem now has to fix the library as well as City Hall and the police station and so on.
Right, and we took care of the police station. We voted bonds to build a new police station, and that's a great thing.
And new buildings, new city buildings are automatically designed to be seismically safe.
Right, so the new police station will be seismically safe. The library is sort of next in the queue. And people ask us, well, what about City Hall? We think that will come next.
Well, they have to get the police facility built so that they can move the police department out before they start working on that, because there's a different standard if you have people in there 24/7.
Right.
Exactly, and it'll be 3 years at least until their new facility is ready. So in the meantime, they'll start working on the library because they can do that. They can't do it while the police are there in City Hall.
Well,
So,
that's true.
Yeah, if we pass this bond measure on November 7th, the plan is to have planning, to hire an architect and do planning for probably most of 2018. And then the project to make our library earthquake safe probably wouldn't begin until 2019.
And now the library will not stay open while this is going on, I take it.
No, the library has to move out because what this involves is building what they call shear walls. And these are large concrete walls that are in addition to the walls that are already there on the inside of the library.
To make it rigid.
Right, to make it rigid. Right now, when we get the big one, the library is going to do this, and the engineering report says it then will do this.
And if you watched any of those videos from Mexico, you saw exactly that thing.
Exactly.
You
like
see the
this,
curtains moving,
and then this.
then it just all went like that so quickly.
Yeah. So these shear walls that they'll build, and they'll attach it to the walls that are there. They'll anchor it in the ground. They'll tie them across on the top. And what they'll do is instead of doing this,
They'll just
the
move
library will do this. And it's designed so everybody can get out. And so when it's over, the building won't have collapsed and the collection won't have been destroyed. I mean, that's another issue. We've got a library collection that has been, our library's 105 years old this year. And so they've been building that collection for over a century, and we don't want to lose that either.
And we don't want to lose the people in the library.
We don't want to
That's the
lose
main
them.
And they're open, well, like at this time of the year, they're open 6 days a week.
Right.
And there's like you say, there's a lot of people that use the library.
Right.
Whenever I'm in there, it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
packed.
Yeah, and if you look at the library program that comes out every month, there's this double page of program calendar. It is a busy place. Every room is
It's
busy.
one of the busiest libraries in the whole state of Oregon. And it was open last year for 310 days out of the year. So that's almost, that's not every day, but it's
Pretty close.
Pretty close. We also know that on average about 1,600 people a day use our library. That's a lot. And
They have counters,
yeah, they keep track of that. They have, on average, 4 programs a day for children, reading programs for different ages of children, and every day they have those programs. So a lot of kids are in the library all the time.
And it's not just books. I mean, there's videos so that you can watch movies and TV series if you want. You can get books on, well, I would say books on tape, but they probably don't do those anymore.
They-
Well, audio tape.
Audio.
Yeah, they still call them that.
Oh, okay. But anyway, audio books.
Audiobooks.
Yeah. And there's resource materials there.
Oh, yeah, the genealogy
Oh,
collection.
yeah, the genealogy that was at the State Library
Right.
moved over there.
Right, and that is an irreplaceable collection. I mean, there's one-of-a-kind resources in that genealogy library that if the library were to collapse, another thing the engineering report says is that there's likely to be a fire after the library collapses. So, we would lose that whole collection. We'd lose the genealogy collection, which a lot of it you just couldn't replace.
Yeah, it's not digital. It's just
No,
there in
it's just-
paper.
right.
And so,
Plus all the furniture, that's recently been gradually replaced. So multi-thousands, millions of dollars worth of stuff in there.
so is there, so this, I believe the election is November
7th.
7th. So when will the ballot statements come out and like that?
The ballots are supposed to be mailed on October 18th,
Yeah.
which
And-
means most people will get them on the 20th, 21st, in that range. So just in a few weeks.
Is there any opposition to the bond measure?
Not that we've seen. Thank
so-
goodness.
Yeah, thank goodness. We know about the voters pamphlet because it's already online.
Oh, okay.
And people are going to get it soon. Really, any time now, you'll get your voters pamphlet in the mail, and there'll be 14 arguments, all in favor of the bond measure, and no arguments against. So we were very happy to see that.
Yes.
So, what's going to happen? Well, I mean, it won't stay open while they're doing this, correct?
Do you
Right.
remember when it was closed the last time when they
No.
did a major remodel?
I wasn't living here then.
Okay.
But some
Well,
people, I'm sure,
Yeah.
were here.
Well, the library moved into an empty furniture store out on
Store.
Portland Road.
Yeah, no, fairgrounds.
Fairgrounds, right there, Fairgrounds in Silverton, where it splits. And that worked well.
Yeah, they were there for about a year. And people in North Salem were very happy to
Yeah,
have a library just right down the road.
Very
So
close to them.
they'll have to do something similar to that. They'll have to lease a couple of, at least one storefront kind of space, probably.
Maybe two.
Maybe
Yeah,
two.
Yeah, it could be like 2 branch libraries.
Yeah.
Or somebody from the city said that there's a possibility they could find city-owned property. I don't know what all the city owns, but there's maybe.
But they will move out,
Mm-hmm.
and they will keep operations going.
So how much is the bond for, and what can people, this will come out of people's property taxes, right? So how much are people going to be paying, and how much is the total bond, and how long is it expected to be paid off?
It's $18.6 million, and the increase to people's property taxes will be 12 cents per thousand of assessed valuation. And we did some work to figure out what the average homeowner in Salem would pay at 12 cents per thousand. And it turns out to be $19 a year that property taxes would go up.
$19 a year?
$19 a year. And it, you can't really say definitively how long people will have to pay, because the city does, they sell bonds, and they sometimes they can retire them earlier or later. So there's no commitment. It'll be at least 20 years, I would guess.
So that's about, if you translate that into something that we're familiar with, that's about the price of a large pizza a year,
That's what we're telling people.
or a nice trade paperback.
Yeah, right. One book or a pizza.
Yeah.
So yeah, we think that it's not too much to ask people to keep our library from falling down, and not only will it do that, but in addition to this seismic upgrade, there's going to be repairs, replacements, and renovations done to that 45-year-old building to extend its life 20 or 30 years into the future. So for that amount of money, we think it's a very good deal, because we won't have to build a new library anytime soon. We'll take care of that and have a great library for many decades to come.
Physically, it's a well-designed internal space. It functions well.
Right.
And they'll replace HVAC and plumbing and
HVAC is heating and air conditioning.
Yes.
I know.
Ventilation and air
Yes.
conditioning system.
And I didn't used to know that either.
Yeah.
And what else?
Windows.
Yeah, and
Shelving.
ADA,
And that's
which is the Disability Act, access to everywhere that everyone needs to get into.
right. When our library was built 45 years ago, that was before the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. So our library is not ADA compliant today. But anytime you do this kind of project on a municipal building, you have to bring it up to ADA standards. So that'll be a good thing. Our library will be totally ADA compliant at the end of this project.
And one thing is, I was mentioning, movies and TV and like that, but I think sometimes people don't realize just how much help librarians bring to the public, because sometimes you go in there, you have a question, you're not exactly sure where to look for things or where to get certain information. And to me, the library is an important resource for the community as well as learning. And I guess you would see that too with the school libraries, because you're teaching kids where to find information.
Yes.
And it's not just always online.
That's right. And how to evaluate how to trust the information
That's
that you're
big
finding.
issue
Yes.
these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so yes, the schools teach that, and we teach them and encourage them to go to the public library to use the amazing resources that are not available at the smaller school library.
So, so it's going to probably start being built in 2019. It'll probably take what,
A year.
a year or two. So
Probably a year.
okay. So they won't have any long-term commitments to these other areas where they might end up putting the library temporarily.
Well, I'll tell you, Salem needs more branch libraries. There's no question about that. We have for years. A city of our size would typically, have 3 or 4 branch libraries. So my hope is that maybe by moving our library out into the northeast, south, who knows, maybe it will lead to development of a branch library in at least one area. So that'd be a side benefit. That's not guaranteed. That's just what we hope.
Yeah.
might
Yeah.
happen.
We want a clamoring from the neighborhoods.
Well, yeah, because
Don't
if somebody
leave.
because if somebody has like in the north area, as you were saying, in the south area, then they wouldn't have to come into downtown.
Yeah.
Which then frees up more parking and
Yeah.
creates better traffic flow
Right.
if not everybody has to go downtown
Right.
to the
Yeah.
library.
Exactly. And
People in Northeast in particular are just, by Scheppke Community College, that area, they're a long way from the downtown library.
they are.
And a lot of them have mobility issues. There's a lot of young children and teenagers and
Families with at the most one car. And
Right.
Or
it's-
maybe not even that.
Yeah.
yeah. Another thing is internet. A lot of those families may not be able to afford Wi-Fi, and that's something that the library offers. That's very important for students. So
Yeah. You see people sitting outside the library before it
their
opens.
car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's also the homeless population.
yeah.
That's right.
Right.
Because quite often I know that I have a friend that is homeless, and she's taking courses over at Scheppke, but she has to have Wi-Fi to do her classwork and like
That's right.
that, and
Right.
so she uses the library for that.
That's right.
Yeah.
To
That's a
kind
very important service.
And a lot of people use it to search for jobs,
yeah.
to write resumes, all of those essential online things that you have to do.
So they have the computer lab, where you can go if you don't have a computer, but then they also have Wi-Fi throughout the building. And I think the computer lab, as I recall, is used by about 150 people a day. So if you go down there, it's always pretty much
it's
full
on
of people.
It's scheduled. You
Yeah.
can't sit there all
Right.
day.
Right.
Yeah, and it is packed almost
is.
all the
Yeah.
day.
It is.
They also have, I haven't been down there, but I have to go next week sometime. But you can take your records or tapes and convert them to digital format, or your old VHS tapes and convert
Yeah.
them. And you can scan old photos and turn them into
Yeah.
digital. That's
right.
And all you have to do is schedule it,
Yeah.
and
It's a
you
great
can go down and
service.
do that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I don't see as many people doing that as being on the computer lab, but I know that I've used it for records and tapes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
good.
great. Yeah.
And it's,
There are a lot of resources that
yeah, a lot of resources that people don't know about. And that's
Right.
one of the reasons why I was
Yeah.
bringing it up, because
Yeah.
I used it and I almost never had a problem because there was never anybody else
Yeah.
using it.
Yeah. Every now and then in this campaign, not very often, but, we run into people that say, are libraries still relevant? I mean, maybe we don't need to pass this bond because maybe we don't need libraries. But if you go to the library, if you look at the statistics, 1,600 people a day coming to that building, and all the things they do, all the children's programs, that library is as busy and relevant as it's ever
and
been.
circulation of
Goes
materials.
up. It just keeps going up. So
People-
there's no
People are still reading real
there's
books.
no evidence that libraries are going away. They're more important than ever in many ways. And people thought the internet would kill libraries. The internet has been a huge boon for libraries because we deliver the internet,
And you train people how to.
and we train people how to use it.
And we
so-
provide resources via the
Yeah.
internet
And
that
you know,
are
people say,
trustworthy.
What about ebooks? Well, you can borrow ebooks from the
Right.
Yeah.
public library.
Yeah.
So
And one of the things, too, I read this years ago, and it was a book explaining that people get more information from books than they do from a screen. Because for
Yes.
one thing, you can flip back and forth a lot
Yeah.
quicker than you can page through, different information. And I know that sometimes, when the newspaper actually used to do box scores, It was easier for me to go up and down. If you go out to ESPN to look at a box score, you only get the one box score. Then you have to go flip to another page to get it. So you end up spending a lot more time looking. That's something you're interested in, but it was something I was always interested in.
Yeah.
Well, some people thought that ebooks, would kill paper books, but they haven't.
No, they haven't.
Most people that I know, like me, for example, use both, when it's more convenient. But, books, hardback books, library books are not going away. You have the choice, and it's terrific.
I was just in Chicago last week and riding the L, and I always pay attention to what people are doing. And there are a lot of people, on their phones, but there are always, every car I've ever been in has had 2 or 3 people reading library books.
Right.
You can tell, I know what a library book looks like.
Right.
And it's good to see.
And I think it's, especially maybe for us older folks, books have more feeling. I know that a lot of times kids don't read as much as they used to, that what they do read is online. But I think it's more, I don't know, there's just something substantial about reading a book, I guess.
And I think part of that study that you referred to, or what they know about how we learn on the screen and on the book, there's something about reinforcement, the tactile.
Yeah, and
it's like taking notes. It's you've got
and I think it was also
dimension.
to the fact that you can slow things down. And like a lot of times when you're on a computer, you feel rushed. And like I always used to, I worked in the field, and a lot of time can go by when you're on a computer, and your time frames are very different from reading a book. Plus, it's a whole lot easier, if somebody comes and wants to talk to you about something, it's easier to bookmark it and, like that. So, I mean, I kind of agree with you, Jim. I don't think they're going to go away anytime soon.
No, I don't think so.
And so it's part of why we need a new library, but there's a lot of other functions that the library does. And the genealogy is another one, especially now that they have that resource. And there's people over there staffing to help you find out how to get information, especially like if some of your ancestors came from Europe or Asia or some other place. It's easier for them to help you out.
Yeah,
and
they know
find
the
out.
online sources as well as the paper files that they have.
I mean, another
They're
thing
really
we
good.
haven't talked about yet is the Laux Auditorium. It's a terrific resource. And our library, the one thing they do better than most libraries is programming, both for children and for adults. And that Laux Auditorium is booked, almost every day with the program. The library does some of the programs, but they rent it to other organizations to do their program. And there's actually only 2 libraries in the whole state of Oregon that have an auditorium. So that's something, that's a tremendous value.
It is.
We're actually, our campaign is endorsed by some organizations that use Laux Auditorium heavily, like Children's Education Theater, the Audubon Society, Camerata Musica. They took the trouble to write a voter's pamphlet statement because they value that Laux Auditorium so much.
Well, that's one of the few places here in Salem that'll accommodate a fairly large crowd, too.
It is.
We don't have too many locations for that.
Yeah, it holds almost 300 people. So it's a great space and a real asset to the community.
They have children's programs like the Reptile Man come and
the summer reading program is so terrific, and they have those big programs at the Laux Auditorium.
So if people want to find out more about the campaign, or maybe they want to help out, what can they do?
Well, we have a great website that we created, and it's renewourlibrary.org. Easy to remember. renewourlibrary.org. And it has information, it has frequently asked questions, it has our endorsements, it has news about
There's a
our
place to volunteer.
campaign, and a place to volunteer. So that's one resource. Another is actually the City of Salem has put up an excellent website. Yeah, it's on their front page, the home page of the city website, and that's cityofsalem.net. So either renewourlibrary.org, cityofsalem.net, lots of information.
Well, I wonder though. I mean, it's kind of interesting in these times that we live in, where information is now suspect as to where it comes from, and people have kind of don't necessarily, especially if you're on the internet, you don't know what some of these sources are, and they don't cite sources usually there. And maybe since you are librarians, you can maybe emphasize the point about why you need to check the sources of information.
Why don't you do that? You used to teach high school students.
I used to teach that, yes. Well, you look for the reliability of the source, and in the case of something you read online, you check to see, like you could just Google that fact that seems like maybe that's not right, and see where else it's appearing. And if there's a pattern of appearing in across the board mainstream Time magazine, Newsweek, that kind of thing, New York Times, Variety, then it's probably been checked out, fact-checked. If it's from one source or two sources that you've never heard of before, then maybe you ought to not believe that one.
I just remember when I was in high school, I believe it was an English class, and somebody was saying, well, how do you know something's, good or not, basically. And the teacher said, Time. And the kid got all upset. Why does Time magazine get to those kind of determinations? But a lot of times what we're talking about is like a depth of people understanding an issue and talking about it and writing about it.
Yes, and having editors who check their facts.
Well, that seems to be something that I've noticed on the internet that drives me crazy, because there's an awful lot of misspelling and grammar errors, and it drives me crazy, because what's going to happen to kids that think that this is now okay?
Oh, and things like tweets and
when you're trying to minimize how much you're saying and you're using abbreviations and everything else, and I look at that and I don't even know what they're talking about.
There's one young adult novel where the whole thing is written that way, with all those abbreviations like kids use.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the most challenged books. I think it's on that list.
So what would you give as your best reason for passing the library bond?
Saving lives.
Jim?
I think it's just our responsibility. The last time we had a library bond measure was in 1968, when most of us, didn't even live here. I don't think I was voting age in 1968. So we haven't had to support our library, but now's the time. And it's really, I think, the responsibility of people that live here in Salem now to make sure that our buildings don't fall down. It's real simple. When we're campaigning, canvassing outside the library, and people are rushing by and they need a one-sentence description of why they should vote yes, I say it's so our library building won't fall down. It's as simple as that.
Well, Jim and Judy, I'd like to thank you for coming and explaining why we need to renew our library.
Thank you, Ken.
And join us next time here on City Beat.